minute to minute. Okay, here we go. We're live. Yeah, thank you, Lori. Okay, live on Facebook. All right, I'm going to mute everyone before I share my screen and get into the workshop, and then we'll have questions at the end, okay? So for anyone tuning in from Facebook, if you're just hopping on, I may or may not be able to admit you into the waiting room because I'm going to be doing this presentation live. So if you're not let in on the Zoom room, don't freak out, just watch it on Facebook, and then you can ask me questions like in a private message afterwards or something. But welcome everybody. I am super excited to be stepping back into my role as a teacher. This is, yeah, the first time I've taught a class since way before, I guess it was like the second year I moved to Mexico. So for about 3 years. And I feel just as nervous as I am excited. It's kind of like this threshold where like once I start, I won't be able to stop. So I had to check in with Spirit a lot and be like, is this something you really want to do? Do you really want to get back into this? And I was the full body yes. So that has a lot to do with the topic that I'm going to be sharing. Good morning, Jess.
Hey, good morning.
Is grounding. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up my slides. And again, trusting in technology, that it's all just gonna work. Here we go, okay. Okay, this bar needs to move, thank you. All right, okay, I guess I will be able to see participants come in. Let me move this over though. Okay, so grounding the higher self into the physical body. This is not going to be a talk on grounding, like as we would Google it and you look up grounding and it's like, put your feet on the earth. That's a fantastic way of grounding, but this is going to be much more of a conceptual talk. And really the whole, this is going to come up like from here on out in my teachings, because it really is the way to surrender, the way as I know it. And I'm gonna explain what I mean by grounding and what the higher self is and how this all works to really be able to allow you to create a more fulfilled and connected life. That's the point. That's what I want people to learn, because I'm just as much in this process, and I've been waiting for a really long time to like get there and arrive to teach this. And I just had to come to the realization, which is the truth, that this is a day-to-day process. It's a never-ending process. It's a lifelong process. And as much as we can wrap our heads around this concept of grounding that I'm going to talk about today, and start to anchor that in our subconscious, like at our core, and do it over and over and over and over and over, that's when the magic starts to happen. So grounding, what is grounding? What am I talking about? So grounding to me is really this ability to be able to house and hold as much of our soul in our physical body. So it's like being in alignment with your higher self and not living from pure lower self. And I'm going to get to that in the next slide, higher self versus lower self. But it's really this ability to like be our full soul potential, be in alignment, be in flow state. So this is done in very different capacities for each of us, and different capacities moment to moment for a lot of us, depending on what we're going through at the moment. But it depends on your level of consciousness. It depends on our level of willingness to like do this work. By work, I'll talk about action steps later on. And, to do the work to stay grounded and take the actions towards living more from the higher self. So again, this is in flux 24/7, moment to moment. It's not like a one-time and done thing. It depends on things like karmic patterns that we came in with, that we're working through. Again, our level of consciousness and just the willingness to really surrender And I said surrender to the pain to transcend certain patterns, because that's a pattern that I think humans have in general, is avoiding pain. So really this ability to like get in, stay grounded, has to do with our level of courage, like our capacity for courage and just going towards the thing that scares us most. So for some of you, this may be like information you've already heard. To be quite honest, the higher self, the term higher self only came into my realm like within the last year. So it has a lot of different terminologies, but I am going to use higher self and lower self because I seem to hear a lot of people in the spiritual community using those terms. But higher self versus lower self. So the higher self is like our highest potential to connect with the highest frequency that's available to us, like this aspect that it just knows what spirit wants for us. It's like our infinite soul potential. And it's very much in alignment with your soul's intention for you coming to earth to have these experiences, to have the greatest growing experience you can. And the lower self is basically, it can be thought of like our programming. It's a super dense aspect of ourselves. It's our bodies, our animalistic way of reacting. So it is just an illusion, but it serves us very much in in being in these human bodies. But it is a very dense aspect. Again, programs, habits, like it's our reactions. So when we're living from a purely lower self, especially as adults, when we're living from a pure lower self aspect, we just keep hitting walls, coming up against walls, coming up against walls, coming up against walls. And it's when we decide to step into more of like a higher self aspect and choose to react from that state, that then we can start to transcend from some of these patterns. So why does grounding our higher selves even matter? Like that's kind of, I was like, do I put this in or not? But yeah, I think it is good to remind ourselves, myself included, that now more than ever, more human beings are going to be called to do this work of grounding our souls into our physical bodies. I can tell you this, I've basically been avoiding this work for the last 20 years. And as I say that, I start to feel grief come up because I was doing the spiritual work. I was on the spiritual path, but I was missing this piece of grounding. And so, and I'm going to get into more of what that actually means in my process later on in these slides, but there's a massive awakening happening. And if we don't start to allow ourselves to feel what's going on, we're going to miss the boat. And by miss the boat, I don't mean that there's anything wrong with that. We're just going to be not allowing ourselves to live and have like the ultimate expression of what it means to be alive in a human body. And so I hope that we all can start to realize that, first, like just as an idea, like we are really a divine spark. We are a piece of our soul that chose to come down and have this human experience. That was our choice. So we need to become fully responsible for being embodied in this experience. Being embodied, and I'm not going to get into conversation around what this means, but it does exist in like the 3D, 4D, and 5D. We're very much living in all of these dimensions right now. So the more we can practice grounding, the more experience of the more experiences we're going to give ourselves living in these multi-dimensional aspects. So embodying your higher self and honoring this soul vehicle gives you access to some pretty fucking awesome experiences, like being fully connected and one with another person. Having cosmic orgasms. I've recently started to hear that term a lot. And like, I don't think I've ever experienced one of those, but I sure want to. So the more we can do this and bring ourselves into our physical body, the more experience we're going to get to feel what we really came here to feel and experience in the 3D. It also gives you access the more you ground, the more continuously you practice grounding, it gives you access to this greater knowledge, the greater wisdom, and this greater understanding of who you are and who we all are, which starts to really give me a lot more hope to continue living and going through these like hard experiences that we go through as humans. Okay, so before we get into the tips on grounding, I think there's a couple foundations depending on where you are in your understanding of this, but foundationally, it's really important to know that this is a constant practice. I'm going to say it again. It's not like a one time and done. It's not like oh, I got it today, so I'm going to get it for the rest of my life. Like we easily forget because of the pain, because of our traumas, because we're so good at surviving, we block these things out. We block our memory out of what it means to ground. So this is a constant practice. And the more you can bring focused awareness to these knowings that and truths that I'm going to bring up, you'll be able to do this more naturally. Like you won't have to think about it before you go into your higher self. So first concept that's really important is just to become aware of your higher self versus your lower self. And grounding absolutely requires action, but it's really important to begin to consciously, like mentally, and maybe this means journaling, maybe this means just slowing down and like doing a whole reflection. I'll give you guys an example in a second on a situation that happened to see the two selves at work here. And then once you begin to recognize the higher self, then you start to acknowledge it and praise it and be like, okay, yes, I did it. Like I made the different action. I did the higher self thing. And then the more you do that, the more momentum you'll start to gain, which will then allow you to anchor this wisdom in your physical body. And really, the more practice we do this, like it came up in the conversation with Jessica yesterday, like call your spirit guides in all the time. Be like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, help me. Do that 20 times a day until you start to get the answers. And then give those answers praise. Synchronicities happen. You'll see this beautiful sunset and you'll feel like you are the sunset. You'll see a bird and you'll be like, that's my grief flying away. Like, the more energy you give to those moments, the more this will start to happen unconsciously. So I just let me tell you an example. What's coming to mind? Okay. So one of my biggest, so the best way to become aware of the higher self versus the lower self is when shit hits the fan, is in a trigger moment. So I used to get, and I still do, but it doesn't bother me as much anymore, but I used to not be able to like handle it when my husband would tell me he'd be home at a certain time and he shows up 2 hours later. 2 hours later, he's walking in the door. I'm like blaming, shaming, threatening, anger is just spewing out of me. Like I can't even handle it. So this is a great opportunity for me to learn. Like that's clearly my lower self. Clearly I have been hurt in a way that is triggering something that's way deeper than him coming home 2 hours late. So I did a lot of work around this. I started to note like, what part of me was being hurt by that? Where does this come from? It ended up being some abandonment issues that happened, more me abandoning myself in my 20s. That's kind of the thing that came up around this. And so okay, I have a clear picture. Like, what's the lower self? Okay, what's the higher self in this? Like the lower self gives me a really narrow set of reactions, and pretty much I'm always gonna keep, I did this, always gonna keep coming up against the same wall. Like he's always gonna be turned off by that. I'm always gonna be angry. We're gonna have to relive the situation, or I'm gonna have to relive these emotions again until I decide to act from the higher self and transcend that pattern. So what became available to me once I started looking at the higher self was, okay, all I really needed to do was just talk myself out of reacting. And like, it wasn't that hard. Once I started doing that, I started having compassion for myself, for the pain in my past that had caused that. I had compassion for him because he's out working his ass off. Like, of course he wants to do whatever he needs to do before he comes home, right? So I got this compassion for me, this compassion for him. We started having better communication. And so if you can see from this like higher self versus lower self gives you like very few options, whereas the higher self gave me compassion, gave me forgiveness, gave us better communication, gave me so much more love and respect for me for going through all that process, and so much more love and respect for him for like continuing to put up with my actions for one, but also just, you know, wanting to do better too. Like he started to come home earlier, at least call me when he's not going to be home. So it opened up this huge, like infinite possibilities for growth. So I hope you start to see that becoming aware of this higher self versus lower self is available to us in any situation. And the higher self is like access to infinite possibilities, and lower self is really just survival. Okay, so let's get into some grounding tips. So first and foremost, like this is the one that is all you can always come back to is gratitude. And I know it's kind of like to me, I just used to roll my eyes at it. And the reason I would roll my eyes at it is because I didn't feel it all the time. So if I didn't feel gratitude, I thought it was just, I wasn't doing it right or something, or it's just like, oh, but really like fake it till you make it. This is always what I come back to. If I find myself I'm like, oh, I'm feeling so sorry for myself, or like wanting so much attention, or just feeling like I'm running up against walls, I do bring myself back to gratitude, because really this is like the kind of like the center point of us being able to create safety and trust in ourselves to become whole again. And I know it sounds so basic, but this has helped me so much. And just acknowledging the fact, like really, and this is kind of like me talking to myself in a tantrum. Like, you wouldn't be having this tantrum, Hollis, if you weren't alive. Would you rather be not here, or would you rather be here living this like really hard situation? Of course, I'd rather be here, Hollis. Okay, so that kind of starts to lighten the energy around it. So really bringing ourselves back to gratitude as much as often as possible. And this can be in awesome moments, and this can be when you're depressed, when you're sad, when you're just like feeling super hopeless about something, or have this situation that you just can't figure out. Coming back to gratitude kind of lightens the energy around things. And then again, bringing it back to this repetitively acknowledging infinite potential and your spiritual support system. So again, like you don't have to be feeling high vibe to do this. In fact, we often don't remember to thank our guides when we're feeling super high vibe. Like when you're feeling like shit, this is a great moment to be like, hey, okay, like I'm ready. Talk to me now, you know? So just acknowledging this infinite potential, this connection with your higher self as much as possible. And then I'm like, dang, once you begin to create a dialogue, a more consistent way of communicating with your spirit guides, you'll be off to the races. And this creates momentum, and it creates like a lot of momentum around bringing these fragmented pieces of you back and being able to anchor your higher self into your body. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these fragmented pieces and like healing what a lot of people refer to as energy leaks. I like this word because it gives me a good visual. But really the whole basis around this group is and this word has been coming up a lot lately. I did not even say this. I've just been listening to it and I'm like, okay, I need to bring this in, but is just bringing ourselves back to bringing our soul back to us in all its fragmented pieces that we put out there, and creating a sense of home in us, creating a sense of wholeness again. So you might even be inviting spirit in often. This was my 20-year like asleep period. I was totally calling on spirit, but I had zero consciousness of how much I was leaking out, that I was not getting anywhere. I was literally just doing all this work and then letting it spew out, and I wasn't able to anchor it into my body. So it's really important to save yourself from like getting really frustrated, to start to take inventory. Where is your energy actually going? Like this, and these are kind of journal prompts questions. So what are you constantly thinking about? And this might be really conscious and this might be super unconscious. And I'll tell you a big epiphany that came up for me yesterday when I did this writing was around my dog. My dog, I love my dog. Who doesn't love their dog? But I haven't done the work to create a relationship between us that he's well trained. So I didn't realize how much weight it was having on me. I'm feeling guilty that he's on the beach doing these things. I'm feeling really stressed out when he starts to bark. I'm feeling angry all the time. And I was like, holy crap, like I bet 60% of my energy in a day is like going towards this unresolved issue that I haven't claimed responsibility around. So that's the kind of stuff. This was kind of conscious to me, but like not really until I started to write it down. I was like, wow, I think about Luca a lot and like not in such a great way. So this is the kind of brilliance that can come out of putting this to paper. So taking inventory. Are you trying to force things that just aren't flowing? That came up yesterday in Jessica's talk. Like, are you trying to force things? Just forget about it. Like maybe it's just time to put it down for a while. Especially if all your energy is going there, you're not getting anywhere. Maybe just like take a step back from that. What spiritual growth topics have you just completely avoided? That was ancestry for me. This was one where I was like, I don't need that. Nope. What parts of you have you disowned? This might be obvious for someone, and I'll give my example. I had a period of drug addiction in my early 20s that I completely just said when it was over, when I finally overcame that addiction, like I'm not going back there ever again. Shut it away, block, block, block. I had to go back there. I had to feel a lot of those emotions I hadn't allowed me to feel to become whole in that piece of me and piece of my energy. And then what parts of you just are you just not accepting? Like body issues, huge one, right? Like we are constantly, I know for me, like when I was going through my body issues, I was just constantly disappointed in myself. And, we can say we're accepting of ourselves, but it's really about feeling those emotions around those parts of you that you aren't accepting and going into the forgiveness over and over and over. Okay, so once we've got our inventory done, then we're going to take action steps. Like, of course, we need to take action, right, to create change. So take this easy. Remind yourself that there is no rush around this. And this is as much, I'm saying this to me as much as I am to the audience. Like, this is your life's path. This is actually all this work is what we're meant to do. So there's no rush in doing this. In fact, the slower you can do this process, the more chance you give yourself to integrate these lessons. The better self-mastery you become, and really the more potential and power you have to transcend these things once and for all. And that means ascension of these, lifelong self-sabotaging behaviors. Like once that's gone, like think of something you've been doing for 20 years that you haven't been able to overcome. Just give it patience. There's still more to learn, right? So there's no rush in doing these. It's all about daily action in like the tiniest ways sometimes. And all of that compounded action will come to a head at some point, and then you'll get the breakthrough. I promise you'll get the breakthrough. So yeah, and then trying to get a sense based on your inventory. And this is a whole nother teaching that I'm going to do later on down the road. But I just wanted to mention it in this teaching. But trying to get a sense based on your inventory, what your core identity wound is. So I learned about this core identity wound in a course I did this summer. And, the core identity wounds are I'm not safe, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable. Every emotion, thought, experience, story that we have in our life comes back to these core identity wounds. So just try and get a sense of what that is. For most of us, pretty much all of our lower self reactions are going to come back to one wound. Mine's I'm not safe. For empaths, a lot of empaths that I see, typically, it's I'm not safe. And we start creating safety, which means guarding ourselves from connection, protect, for me, it was drug and alcohol. Like that protected me really, really well, because I didn't feel safe. Because if we're not taught these things growing up, then we start to survive in a way that protects these wounds. For someone who, I'm not worthy, those people were probably, if that's their core wound, you're most likely going to try and do, and it's never going to be enough for you or anyone else. So trying to get an idea of what these core identity wounds are, and this is really advanced, this is really deep work, but it helps on such a level that, like, working on that wound, once you like, I'll just give you my example. Like, pretty much everything I do now that seems challenging, I have to remind myself that I'm okay. And usually that means me giving myself 10 reasons that I'm going to be okay before it gives me the courage to do it. So it can really help in this process of, actually being able to do the grounding work, to know our core wounds. And I just love, so Ariella Daly was on a podcast that I listened to. It's called Medicine Stories. She was being interviewed, and she just said this thing that resonated so deeply with me, and I wanted to bring it up because our biggest traumas are what we weave our gold out of. So go back to your traumas, take inventory around your traumas, and just know that, there's no sense in being victimized anymore. We chose that for ourselves. We totally manifested that situation. And it's okay to forgive yourself. It's okay to forgive others, because it's really what we're weaving our gold out of, and what's going to make us be able to share and help someone else through that someday in the future. Okay, so moving on to this part about getting comfortable with being an emotional being. This is a huge part of being able to ground our higher self into our physical body. Especially, again, for the empaths, but it doesn't mean just empaths. Everyone as humans we're feelers, we're emotional beings. It's just a part of who we are. We can't escape it. So accept it. Accept that not only are we emotional beings, but every emotion you have is what you're attracting. Okay, so not anyone else's fault. Of course, yes, we can be triggered and have an emotion, but we manifested that. And this is a really deep process, but just getting used to that truth that we are emotional beings. It's okay to feel, and our emotions are our responsibility. Emotions are actually, okay, so I have to share this piece because I wasn't really aware of this, but on planet Earth, we, as a part of this galaxy, or as a part of, like, this multi-dimensional space that we're living in, as like a tiny ant and like a tiny dot in the middle of the big sky or whatever, we're actually helping other dimensions have experiences of depths through our emotions. So I found that really empowering when I heard that. I think it was from a channeler. Her name is Wendy. I can't even remember her last name, but she channels the ninth dimensional Pleiadians. And she was saying that they learn from us, from our emotional experiences. I found that really empowering from someone who has been avoiding emotions my entire life because they're scary and they're intense. I was like, hey, if I'm teaching like billions of beings what this means to be alive and have this emotional experience, that's really cool. So it may or may not resonate with you. It's a little out there, but for me, I was like, that is awesome. That gives me a lot of courage to step in and have these emotions because I'm a teacher for the greater good. So yeah, allowing yourself to experience these emotions to completion, right? Not like guard them or like escape them, is a really good way to get used to opening your body to have this full energetic expression of being connected to the higher realms and being grounded on earth. And this is going to create, okay, so this is a suggestion, like create more experiences where you are experiencing more high frequency emotions. So we do have this different in frequency of the emotions. It's not bad to be sad. It's not bad to be angry. It's not bad to have grief. but we're meant to experience that and then go have it like flow into something else. So when we create more experiences where we're experiencing more high frequency emotions, maybe that's listening to music that makes you really happy. Maybe that's movement. Maybe that's going on vacation. Maybe that's being on the beach. We all know what experiences give us joy and pleasure. So doing those more often will actually help this grounding process, because it makes those lower density emotions like not so bad when we know we have access to the higher ones. It's some of us get really stuck in the low density emotions and forget what it feels like to experience joy and experience pleasure. So this is your responsibility to give yourself the opportunity to be exposed to these higher frequency emotions. And maybe it's just for a second, right? Maybe it's just like a second of emotional release and you feel really good, and then you go right back into the anger or the resentment. It's fine. Just keep practicing and keep acknowledging these higher frequency emotions. So ways to feel. We need to remind ourselves that we are energy in motion. So we sometimes need to do actions to create feeling. Breath work is a great way to move emotions. Yoga, being in stillness and just allowing things to come up. Writing, music, dance, creative expression, just doing what you love. And then I do want to mention, everyone's going to have a different experience of what emotion is. Some people, like I said, some people are going to be super sensitive. For me, I actually learned that I have to express my emotions really cathartically. Like that feels like I can express it to the fullest expression. Some people can just have a little cry, go on a walk on the beach, almost mentally process their emotions, and that might be to completion. So again, coming back to this self-responsibility and empowerment around this, getting familiar with what that means to you, how it is, what's your experience of emotion? Like for me, I can tell you that when I'm feeling anxious, I know it's time for me to express. I need to pick up a bat and just start doing something physical, or I need to go on a run until the tears come up and like have this big sob. I avoided that for so long because that's scary. So I just want to say, like, this, I'm 37. This has taken me that long to get comfortable with the way I feel. So this is a huge self-responsibility piece, but it's a huge freedom point too. It's like such a relief when you realize and befriend that part of you that knows how to feel and express and have those emotions to completion. Okay, so going back to the I didn't realize this slide was in here. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about the core identity wound a little bit more. I think I talked about it quite a bit. So going back to like these core identity wounds, so once we start to get a sense of what that is, and you don't have to identify one and only work on one. We all have, I'm not enough, I'm not safe, I'm not lovable in us. But like I said, there tends to be a common, like richer flavor to one of these in every person. So now that it's just about constant action, using the information you've gathered about where your energy leaks are. And like I said, I remind myself in almost every situation, like a little mantra, like, it's okay, you're safe. And if I don't believe it, I give myself the list of reasons to believe it's safe. This has become so fluid for me because I've practiced this so much and so diligently that pretty much the mantra, like, I am safe, is okay. And if it's not, I go to, are my guides going to let me die if this happens? No, okay, we're good, we're golden. I can totally screw this up. And I love Jessica's mantra yesterday is like, I failed. Like, I totally used that on the beach yesterday. I was like, it's okay to fail. It feels so good to fail. And so just figure out what works for you, you know, like make it fun. Playing with this is when life becomes a ceremony. You're living super, super consciously with every experience. Everything you do in life becomes a learning opportunity. So again, like I said in the beginning of this, if this is kind of a new concept to you, just start with the basics. Start with the headiness of like higher self versus lower self. You have this trigger. Okay, cool. This is an opportunity for me to move into the journaling piece. And this will become fluid really fast for you when you like come up. I mean, when you have a shit show, right? Like this shit show of emotions. I threw a total temper tantrum the other day when my husband's family was here. My family was here. We were moving. And I was like, I'm leaving. Like I yelled in front of a whole room of people. And I was like, oh my God. Got to the beach and I was just like immediately able to laugh it off. Like, it's okay, Hollis. It's totally okay. Like that, I would have probably stayed in shame around that for weeks. I would have defended that as well and had to live that experience again many times. And this is how fluid it's become for me. Like it was a ceremony, like me throwing a temper tantrum ceremony that was so blissful. I got my emotions out. I did what I needed to do. I got to come back and be like humbled and just be like, sorry, just had to be Hollis for a second. And that's all it was. And then it was over and move on to the next ceremony. So this really creates this constant process of grounding. Like I said, grounding is not a one time and done thing. It's a ceremony. It's a process. It's a moment to moment action. Yeah, okay, so the daily action. So these are just suggestions. See what resonates with you. Like I said, this daily action, absolutely do this daily and then moment to moment when you can. These are some of my favorite daily action steps to begin connecting my higher self with my lower self. Connecting with nature, going on walks, laying on the earth, like really laying on the earth, like face down on the earth, like on the beach, on your back. Being in silence, just giving yourself a moment to like be with your surroundings. Communicating with plants. And you guys, if you haven't done this doesn't have to be a major thing either. So I'm going to give you a couple of my favorite ways to communicate with plants. Flower essences and tinctures. Very low concentrated plant extracts, but highly spiritually concentrated. So taking a few drops and then giving yourself like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to just like see what happens after that. Like what thoughts come in, what emotions come up, what messages do you get from spirit. Another way is just literally to sit down with the plant and have a conversation. We do this all the time. You just don't know you're doing it. When you see a flower and you get distracted from whatever your mental process is, or you think, wow, that's really pretty, like a more obvious thought, or you just like get wrapped up in like looking at this flower, that you're communicating with the plant. So this is we're doing this a lot more often than we think. And this is really our higher self stepping in and saying, hey, like, look at me over here, this infinite multidimensional being. I'm a plant. I'm so much help to you. I love you. And then paying attention to your spirit animal totems. We got that download, a little bit of an insight into that with Jessica yesterday with her medicine cards. So yeah, you're out and about, see an animal, go look it up afterwards. What message did that animal have to communicate to you? Okay, do creativity. So do these things, sing, playing. This has been such a huge help for me in allowing me to be in my body. Again, because I express emotions cathartically, but banging on a drum is like not only a physical action, but then once you start to feel the resonance of that, you guys, you don't have to be a musician. These are medicine instruments for a reason. People have been using these for as long as they've been able to, for a reason. Like banging on a drum is super helpful to get you into your body. Singing, dancing, painting, drawing, building a mobile. I love mobiles, making a collage. So do something creatively to get yourself out of your mental process and just allow that infinite potential to flow in and flow through you. Paying attention to, again, this is kind of repetitive, but it's so important, paying attention to and celebrating your synchronicities. When you see angel numbers, take a picture of it or like send, I have Lori and Andrea for every time I see an angel number. I like celebrate it because it's so important. It brings conscious awareness to the fact that your guides are there. And so the more, this is our muscles we're building. And so the more you celebrate your synchronicities, the more they're going to come in. Moving your body. This has to be a priority. Like, we literally can't escape this. You have to move your body. This doesn't mean exercise. I want to draw a really clear line around that, make a really clear point around that. It doesn't have to be exercise, but this is movement. This is dance. This is going on a walk. This is like, I don't know, moving your arms around a little bit, spinning in circles, whatever it is, you have to have some kind of movement to your body to allow these energies to integrate and ground into your body. Meditation, of course, meditation is a great way to get into your body. Stay tuned for the meditation on 12/26. We're actually going to be doing a very embodied visualization meditation. It's called the attunement meditation. It just came to me yesterday and I'm super excited about it. And yeah, again, just I promise you that getting into a routine of practicing connecting with your soul, your spirit guides, and doing the work to operate from your higher self, you will want to keep doing this because it's going to feel so different. It's going to feel so safe. It's going to feel so good when you start to build this trust muscle. So I just wanted to share this in closing because this is, yeah, it just kind of got me to even wanting to give this talk, even wanting to do and build this community. And it's titled Magic Happens When Conscious Grounding Becomes a Natural Way of Being for Us. So practicing these over and over and over, life becomes a ceremony. This becomes really just who you are. And it sets your spiritual evolution off on like a trajectory that I don't know, like just opens you up to infinite possibilities that you didn't even think were possible. But I wrote this recently after a ceremony. You are remembering who you are with constant action on acting from the higher self. You are feeling more safe. You are remembering each day more of your soul's purpose and why you came here. You are getting glimpses of being fully in your power. It is beyond anything I have ever experienced before, and I want to embody that full power in this lifetime. I am having more synchronicities, speeding up the momentum of this transformational process. I am losing my mind. My ego is dissolving. That is frightening and infinitely expansive and exhilarating at the same time. Surrender, Hollis. You have to surrender every single day, multiple times, if you want to remember in your DNA who you are. This is fun. I'm experiencing being in the portal, being fully connected through my crown, through my entire body and into the earth. This is what they mean by being in the flow. I'm always held and supported by the earth. I am safe to go here, to surrender and remember. I have to go here. I can't go back now. I came here to embody the full experience of being alive in a human body. And so it is. Okay, there you go. So that is the end of my talk. And it also gives you hopefully it gives you a little bit of the lay of the land too, and how surrender to remember even came to be, and how important this is feeling to me, and just to be in community doing this work together is feeling really, really like necessary. Like I can't stop now. I can't stop. And I hope that something resonated with you in regards to that as well. So yeah, we can open it up for questions now. I know this went way over than what I expected, but that's okay because most of you are still on here. So that's awesome. Thank you. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions, or we can open it up into like an open format too. Open discussion.
So, Hollis, I'll go. So other people safe to go too. I think you kind of touched on a little bit, but going back to the core wound, this is something that really resonates, and Jessica hit on it yesterday, I think, for me. But wow, here come the emotions. Traveling back and forth between those, it's a pretty, you can hold all those core wounds, correct? But you're just going to have one that is your major core wound.
So this is, I'm going to go into this in the first month of 2021 on a lot deeper level. This came to me through Eugenia, one of my other teachers. And she, the work we did, it did seem to always come back to one core wound. Of course, we all have all of them, but literally okay, and let me just give you a little bit of lay of the land. Like, our identity is here. When we shift our identity, everything that I'm going to mention afterwards shifts. So our core wound lies in our identity. Next come our stories. We build stories around what our core wounds are, our identity. Then we have thoughts based on those stories. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions create our reality. So yes, we can change, we can work on any of those in that line. But we all know, like, I'm going to use an obvious example. Our core wound is I'm not safe. So we build a story around it's not safe to feel. And then my thoughts are, oh my God, I can't feel this. This is too scary. And then my emotions are overwhelmed. And then my actions are drinking, drugging, So I tried for a really long time to stop, to put this down. But until I was willing to deal with this, none of that changed. I've only stopped drinking in the last 2 months. And that's because I practice here over and over and over. Everything I do, reminding myself I'm safe, reminding myself I'm not going to die if this happens, reminding myself my guides are here. So I tried to work on all of those. I tried to work on my actions. I tried to work on changing my emotions. I tried to work on, even changing the stories and the thoughts around what led me there. And nothing worked until I changed here. So I'm going to go into a lot more depth in the first month of 2021 around this, but I felt it was worth mentioning because it's kind of, just like get a flavor of what that is for you. And I would say just by, like, I haven't had one-on-one clients, but I have a lot of friends who are empaths. Of course, I'd say for the majority of empaths and really sensitive people, the core wound is I'm not safe. And for people that are a little more mental, heady, electric, it's I'm not enough.
Mm-hmm. And those are definitely my two biggest ones, because and I go back and forth between those two places in my life a lot, living in my head and living empathically. So yeah. Thank you. That was an awesome description, Hollis. That really helped bring it in, because I've been working so much on stories when I really need to be working on that core wound.
Yeah, it's a really good exercise to work backwards. But when we have our core wound and we know that every self-sabotaging pattern is going to change if we work here, like, that's what, of course I'm like, I want the quickest way possible, right? So I was like, I'm just going to focus here over and over and over. And I have started to get massive results in my life, things just dropping away, like things just literally dropping away. Uh-oh, everyone's frozen, but everyone's frozen with laughs on their face. So this is really I don't know when it froze. There we go. Everyone's back. Okay, any more questions? Or was that complete, Lori? Okay. Oop. Here, Sheila, let me unmute you. Oh, why can't I unmute you?
There, can you hear me now? Okay, so, as I told you the other day in my private message, I'm here because I want to learn about all of this. Do you have a printout of today's discussion with all the the stuff that you shared. I would love a handout.
I'd be happy to share that. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will. I'll make a PDF of it and share it in one of the emails. So be sure you
Perfect.
check the email.
Yeah,
The people who've registered.
I will.
Yeah, I don't want to put it up.
Yeah, no. Whatever is easiest for you, and it doesn't have to be before Christmas. I mean, just whenever, whenever
easy.
works for you.
Yeah, I'm happy that you asked because I had already kind of thought about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hollis.
Yes. Hi, Reese.
So, hey, I was just curious. So you cut out for a little bit, at least on my end, about the like action items that we can do every day. Can you just do a quick recap of like 3 of them, action items we can do every day to be like consciously getting back into like grounding?
Yeah, so conscious connection with nature, doing something creative. So singing, and I use the the example of playing drums and rattles because that has like a much deeper cellular connection. So yeah, doing something creative, paying attention to and celebrating your synchronicities, moving your body. And then I said specifically that doesn't have to mean exercise, that can just be a walk. But movement is good to like help energy move. And then meditation and yeah.
Thank you, lady. Yeah, you cut out like once or twice during the phone call, and I was just like, I will have to watch the replay, or I can ask a question.
I did ask in the Facebook group if anybody has a question, and no one's responded yet. So
Okay, thank you, Lori. Yeah, does that feel complete, or anyone else have a?
Oh, I have a question, Hollis. Can
Yeah,
you hear
absolutely.
me?
Yep.
Well, first, this it was beautiful. Thank you very much. Just all that you had shared and how just eloquently you expressed it and organized it and thought, and also in your slides. I think it'll be a really great. I took so many notes.
Awesome.
And so I really look forward to the journey with you through that too. But you were talking about plants, and you had said something about flower essence and tinctures. And I am an essential oil, that's my thing. So what are your favorites and why do you like them and how do you use them?
Essential oils or tinctures?
Or, you were talking about like plants, like, should I be bringing in plants into my life? Like I'm one who like, I can't bring plants into my life, but I love them. And I use them in essential oil, but I have such, and this is the wildest thing is because I think I need this plant. I could barely take care of plants, and it's a very real eye-opening thing. It's like how I'm taking care of myself. So, I'm thinking if this is a season for transition and I should be kind of bringing those, I kind of connected when you talked about plants, that what plants do you love? Like what plants are, around you when you talk about, the communicate with plants, the flower essence and the tinctures, like tell me more about.
So this is
advice.
Yeah, I love this question. So this could go like so many different ways. Uh-oh, everyone's frozen again. Bring back the Lemurian crystals. Okay, there we go. Well, you're already working with hemp. So that was a huge part of my journey. Hemp in itself is an adaptogen. So, and then one of the biggest things it's done for me is actually help me be in my body again. So that was a really, really big starting point. And then I actually realized that like we do it unconsciously more often than we think. Like I mentioned the flower like, you know, we're driving by and we just, even if it's just like, wow, this is so beautiful, not focusing on a certain plant, like that is nature communicating with us. So maybe for you, it's just bringing yourself to that conscious awareness of like, wow, I'm noticing that this is a really beautiful driveway, or that's a really beautiful tree. Like that's nature reaching out to you. I call it whenever a tree reaches out, I call it the grandmothers. Like that's I don't know, trees to me are just like this grandmother energy. But I mean, there's not really a specific one that I would recommend. I would, if you're working with essential oils, maybe whatever resonates with you in terms of like the smell, that's what your medicine is for.
Awesome. Okay.
Well, I will
great.
say a snake plant is really easy to not kill. Like they're
Okay,
really
that's my
hard.
style.
like literally you can leave them for like 2 months and they're still alive without any water. So like
What?
if you really want to bring a snake plant, those are like,
snake.
yeah, they're the really
So
cute ones that you
interesting.
see in offices.
I'll have to look for that. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm gonna have to
those
start with that if I can find it here.
exactly, that's how I started. And then I got a moss ball, and I know that that sounds really silly, but literally they're just like, they're little moss balls, and you keep them inside little jars, and they just suck the water out over months and months and months. So you only have to pay attention to it every like 6 months. But
Like a
yeah,
few
just
drops.
having
I
like
remember
both
as
of
a
those
kid
plants.
having, you know, like a little aquarium that like, that's awesome. You're definitely bringing me back. That's great.
Yeah, so both of those plants are really easy to not kill. I mean, I travel a lot. Like I go back and forth to Cabo and Washington every other month. And so if I have any plants, I've killed them all except for my snake plant and my moss ball.
Somehow I have a Mexican rose that's growing and have never touched it. It's so beautiful. It's just
Wow.
a blessing I know, and it's such a special, precious plant. And it is just surviving right there and through every storm that we've gone through. So she is like a blessing to me. I love her, my favorite plant. But
There's a lot of rose medicine.
it's gonna take someone very special to come near her space, I think.
Oh, that's beautiful, Michelle. I love that you said rose, because rose has been, again, that was new medicine to me until this year. And it's been something I've worked with a lot lately. A lot. Yeah.
I would second that. Rose is like one of the master teachers. So she communicates to you with like depth and wisdom. If you talk to like basil or parsley, they have a different vibe, but Rose has been around. She's been so symbolized that she has like so much meaning. And then you can use her flowers, you can use them in, you know, to make things, you can use them to spread for ceremony. Like she's such an ever giving plant. I mean, that's what I would start with is rose. I love rose in all forms.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that feels good. I'm like, ooh, rose. And she's protected,
Yes.
you know, she protects herself. So it's like okay to go into these depths of emotions with rose medicine.
Very cool. Thank you. I'm excited. I'm gonna go after a rose today.
Yeah, I know. I want to go buy some roses now and have them in my room.
Costco.
Does anyone else have any questions? We've gone a little past the hour. So if there aren't any more burning desires. Yeah, and my internet's just like, no, you are not supposed to be on here because everyone's freezing.
Bye, ladies. Have a wonderful day.
All right, you guys. I love you. If anyone has any questions, of course, put them in the comments on Facebook, or you can message me privately. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here this morning. I'll see you tomorrow.
Namaste.
Bye.
Thank you. Namaste.